Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Last week, during the World Economic Forum in Davos, US President Donald Trump formally announced the charter of his so-called Board of Peace, a body for resolving international conflicts with a $1 billion price tag for permanent membership. The board, which Trump launched at that signing ceremony, was originally conceived to oversee the rebuilding of Gaza after more than 2 years of Israel's genocidal war on the Strip. Now, let's look at it from this perspective. In the first phase of the ceasefire, Israel has continued the killing of Palestinians. When you look at the outline of the ceasefire, especially the part which introduces Jared Kushner, there's no mention of the future of Palestinians. There's no mention of Palestinians even being part of this Board of Peace and having a say on the land that they have lived for so many years. Joining me now to take this conversation forward, I'd like to welcome Youmna El Sayed. She covered the genocide in the early days with Al Jazeera, and she is also an independent Palestinian journalist. Youmna, always good to have you on. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me again on the screens of Hilaal TV, Faraz.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Youmna, it's hard not to think of this in a manner which, when you look at that Board of Peace, the signing, there are no Palestinians mentioned. And I guess it really is not just a humiliation for Palestinians, but a spit in the face of the people who for 2 years have had to endure this genocide, and even before that, a brutal occupation which stripped them of so much.
Of course, it's just an extension of the illegal occupation that has been going on for decades for the Palestinian territories and the Gaza Strip. Just to give the viewers an overview and explain to them exactly what this Gaza or this peace board that does not include even the word Gaza in its charter, not even once it was mentioned, although it is supposed to be overlooking the rebuilding or reconstruction of Gaza that was destroyed by the Israeli occupation for over 2 years of a genocidal war. But this Board of Peace, or Peace Board as they call it, is basically an organization that is formed by President Donald Trump, who he places himself as a permanent chairman of this organization that he has formed. So it does not really have to do, and he places himself in that position not as the president of the USA, but as Donald Trump in person. So it doesn't even have to do with his presidency. It is something more of a private investment for Donald Trump. And then we have the structure starts with the permanent chairman, who is Donald Trump, and then the executive board. The executive board does not have one Palestinian representative. It has names like Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and the businessman and an investor, and Tony Blair, a person who has been in so many war crimes before over history, a person with very bad political reputation, and also, for the world's surprise, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister who has been leading a genocidal war for over 2 years, killed over 71,000 Palestinians, destroyed over 90% of the entire Gaza Strip, to be part of this executive board. And as you mentioned, Faraz, of course, there is a $1 billion price tag for permanent members. Of course, no, it's not just, there are no representatives, any Palestinian representatives in that executive board, but not any of the Middle East representatives also in that executive board. And then later on comes the Gaza Executive Board, which is formed by Qatar, the UAE, Egypt, and Turkey, in that, which oversees the other board that comes after it, and that's the day-to-day national board formed of Palestinian technocrats to oversee the day-to-day issues. I don't even know if it's going to be the day-to-day issues for the Palestinian population or not. So basically, starting with that structure, it explains a lot. It explains a lot to the future plan that they have formed or visionized for the people of the Gaza Strip. And then Jared Kushner simply comes with showing us these the so-called new Gaza city or new Gaza Strip, with skyscrapers and highways and industrial hubs, with no mentioning to the population. Those areas where we see those skyscrapers and tourism cities and industrial hubs are areas where homes of Palestinian citizens used to stand, and they are in rubble now. When I look at that plan, it just hit me so much, Faraz, that destroying Gaza or by American weapons in that way, and allowing the Israeli occupation and military to completely destroy Gaza, destroying its hospitals, its schools, its universities in that way, this plan is not a coincidence. It was just an implementation for it.
Youmna, you know what's devastating and what is really has an emotional aspect to this is that those very same properties, and when I looked at the plan, and I'm sure you observed it also, it looked like a sort of AI taken picture, but this was not artificial intelligence. This was the real thing which Jared Kushner and this Board of Peace was really showing to the world. And you can't help but think that these were the homes of families of loved ones who live there. You would know best, Youmna, because you stayed in Gaza. You would have had family in those very areas. And you just think, where is the empathy? But then again, when you're speaking about individuals who are looking at Gaza as a investment, a capitalist way of seeing things, empathy really does go out of the window.
In this plan, for us, there is no vision, there is no horizon, there is no any kind of human even intention to see or feel the people of Gaza, those people who have been going through a genocide for over 2 years and have lost everything. Since the last agreement of the ceasefire, it's been 117 days now. Israel has killed over 480 Palestinian citizens, and it's still conducting its airstrikes in different areas across the Strip, while President Trump simply says that Israel has fulfilled all its conditions for the ceasefire. This just explains to you how much they are dealing with complete double standards with the Palestinian population. Even now, when we're talking about the opening of the border, which is the phase 2 of the ceasefire agreement, Israel is still putting a lot of measures and restrictions on the opening of the border. Israel, until this day, does not want to open the border in both sides, in both directions, where people could come in and out of the Gaza Strip. It just wants to allow people to come out of the Gaza Strip and not allow any to enter. And there are still a lot of restrictions on the entry of the Palestinians who want to go back to Gaza. Let's also not forget that it's been 117 days and the Palestinian population has been suffering of storms in this cold rains and the cold winter, and children are still dying of hypothermia, extensive cold conditions, and the entire world is watching their ruined tents being ruined of the rains that flood them. and no tents until this day, or caravans, or anything is still entering the Gaza Strip. Even the aid that's entering is very few. And that, in the sense of Donald Trump, is a complete fulfillment for the ceasefire agreement. So this plan that has been put out to the world now, which is supposed to be overseeing the reconstruction of Gaza. It's supposed to be overseeing the continuous implementation of the ceasefire and the disarmament of Hamas and the deployment of international security forces, is just focusing now on investments, foreign investments, and investors making the most profit they can over Palestinian lands, while continuing with their ethnic cleansing plan that has started since the beginning of this genocidal war. The question here remains is what happens to Palestinian citizens and population living in the Gaza Strip. I, for example, have a home that has been destroyed,
Youmna,
and the land of that home I want to go back to. Will I ever find it again?
Youmna, sorry, I have to stop you there, but we will continue this conversation after the break and continue that conversation. Does this really serve the interests of the Palestinian people? My conversation with Youmna continues after the break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to News in Focus. Youmna, I was looking at, obviously, the sort of criticism that is coming towards the Board of Peace, and of course, Hamas has criticized it. But the surprising part in all of this was the criticism of the far right of the Israeli government. And I couldn't help but have the sort of humorous take on all of this, because isn't this exactly what they wanted? When you listen to the rhetoric of Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich, it clearly shows that they want the emptying of Palestinians in Gaza, and they want Israeli settlements to be happening on the land, especially in the Beit Hanun area, where after an Al Jazeera investigation through its Sanad agency found that Beit Hanun has been flattened, which could potentially make way for these settlements to occur.
The problem with this far-right government is that how they see it now and why they are not very happy about this Trump plan is that because they want the entire land for themselves. They don't want it to be divided between them and other foreign investors, American investors. They want the entire cake for themselves. They see Gaza as a place, a land with rich resources. Let's not forget that in the middle or the central part of the Gaza Strip, in Deir al-Balah, there are Gaza gas fields that are worth billions of dollars. And of course, for many years, Hamas controlling the Gaza Strip has prevented Israel from taking over these gas fields and making use of them. So this is a land that is rich of resources. It's a Palestinian land, but now, as Trump sees it, is that this land is full of resources that we can also have a share and a part in. The mentality of a businessman or an investor who wants to take the resources and make profit out of the resources of these lands. But on the other hand, the far-right Israeli government wants to confiscate this land for themselves, for a greater Israel. They want to confiscate the lands with the resources and expel all Palestinians out of that land and not be shared with any other foreign parties, including Trump or other parties that he has, or people, individuals that he has introduced.
Youmna, I want to speak on Ali Shah, because he was obviously mentioned as somebody who would lead this technocratic government. But I'm looking at the sort of diagram of who's the sort of governing body that supersedes one another. And it's quite clear at the bottom of the food chain, if I can use that sort of description, is that of the Palestinian technocrats. So what it means is whatever gets stole from the top needs to be filtered down to the bottom. And that was the opening question I'd asked you earlier on. That, again, the Palestinian people are not really the key decision makers of this. So it kind of means that Ali Shad's role in this is really muted in terms of the orders that he has to receive from the top, which means, again, no Palestinian decisions making that is happening in a land which is for Palestinians.
Of course, there's no question that even this so-called national committee that is formed of Palestinian technocrats, this committee is just formed because they want a Palestinian face and a Palestinian tongue to be the ones who are having the dialogue or implementing the orders that they are given by the executive board and by the chairman of this board to the Palestinian population. So basically, how I see it is that they don't even want to deal with the Palestinian population. So they've just formed a board of Palestinians that can deal with the population and pass on their orders. And it's no secret that this national committee will have no power whatsoever to actually say or implement their own vision or their own views in the upcoming near future, at least for the Palestinian people or for Gaza. These are just more of faces that are familiar to the Palestinian population to deal with them directly after they are or to implement what they have been told. But at the same time, for Palestinians, they hope that at least the fact that there is a Palestinian committee, there are Palestinians in this part of this greater board, would make a change, could have at least a resemblance of Palestinians governing the Gaza Strip. But it's a catastrophe that the legitimate body of Palestinians, which is the PA, it's still the legitimate body of governing the Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority, would have no presence in this board. It was not invited. It does not have any role to govern another part of the Palestinian occupied territories, while the occupier, the illegal occupier under international law, is part of this executive board who is in charge of governing a land that they have occupied for dozens of years.
Youmna, one final question to this. So we know who's not going to be part of this Board of Peace, Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister. The European Union has pulled out of it. Well, some of its countries have pulled out of it. And I was listening to an interview by Yaris Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister, and he said, it's up to the European Union really to take a bold step and hold America accountable in this. The way we see it right now, and of course this extends to countries in the Middle East, when you look at the Board of Peace, there's no holding this accountable. They can go into Gaza and they can do what they want to do, and nobody's going to do anything because, again, this is not run or has some sort of role for the United Nations. I guess it's clear, isn't it, Youmna? We are in the law of the jungle right now.
Unfortunately, we are. And they are dealing with Gaza as if it's a land that has no honors. And the people of Gaza do not exist. We are either going to kill them or expel them. And they have been doing that for the past 2 years. The European Union, for many years, has always supported the Palestinian Authority, at least financially, to keep it standing and to keep its existence ongoing. Otherwise, Israel would have completely overtaken and destroyed the Palestinian Authority. But it believed for many years, and it has always been telling us that the Palestinian Authority is the legitimate Palestinian body to govern the Palestinian state in a if a two-state solution will ever be implemented. And that is what they have believed for many years. Being part of this board in any way, in anyhow, means that the entire past years that they have spent supporting the Palestinian Authority and calling for a two-state solution do not exist and will go in vain. And that's why they hold tight to their stance in not supporting this board. Until now, the European Union still backs the United Nations decision that it should be the one that should be the main responsible for the implementation of a two-state solution and the governing of the Gaza Strip later on, with the international security forces and all the other plans that were previously put on the table, but none of them was actually taken. As we see it now, for us, you're saying this is the law of the jungle. Nobody has the power to tell Donald Trump what you're doing is illegal, and you're not supposed to do it. You're not allowed to do it, because basically everyone has been silent for the past 2 years of genocide while an entire population was eliminated before their eyes. And this is just the normal result of their silence and complicity for the past 2 years.
And what we can take from this as we close this discussion is that the two-state solution may potentially be another myth at this time. Youmna, always good speaking to you. Shukran so much for joining us. Ma salama.
Thank you.
That's a Youmna El Sayed, Palestinian journalist, and of course she covered the early days of the genocide in Gaza for Al Jazeera. After the break, we're going to be discussing a potential army deployment into areas with high crime. Can we see that happening? What are the pros and what are the cons with regards to this? I'll be speaking to crime-fighting activist Hanif Lunat after the break. Do stay tuned.